Is it on? Yeah, there we go. Hey. Okay. Um, Today I want to talk about these genealogies in Luke and Matthew. Briefly, in Matthew, we're told right in the very first verse that the author is going to present the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, son of Abraham. And then he proceeds to give a list of names, and he outlines it 14 generations from Abraham to David the king, and then 14 generations from David the king to the carrying away to Babylon, and then 14 generations from the carrying away to Babylon to the Christ, or Jesus, who is called Christ. That's according to, I guess the King James says it that way. Now that genealogy shows the father of Joseph is Jacob. Now and it's given, the line is down from David through Solomon. Okay, that's in Matthew. You go over to Luke chapter 3. I'm going to share this on the screen just so we can be looking at the same thing. Okay, this is in Matthew, what I was just explaining. Matthew 1 through verse 16 is the genealogy given there. And then verse 17 kind of gives you what I just explained, the breakdown. So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations. From David unto the carrying away into Babylon are 14 generations. And from the carrying away into Babylon unto Christ are 14 generations. So here is how he has it all laid out. In verse Matthew 1:6, it says, and Jesse begat David the king, and David the king begat Solomon, of her that had been the wife of Urias. Okay, so this is Solomon's line going down to verse 16. It says, and Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. Okay, so from Solomon down to Joseph, or down to Jacob. Okay, there's all these names in here. Now, if you go over to the book of Luke, chapter 3, right here. Now, the Bible here, this is the King James Version. It has a header here called the genealogy of Jesus Christ. This is put in here by the people who compiled the Bible in English, or the people. This isn't put in there by the author. In Matthew, the very first verse, it actually says in the text the genealogy of Jesus Christ. But in Luke, it doesn't say that this is a genealogy of Jesus Christ. That's what the people who put your Bibles together, they're the ones that, put all the chapters and verses in there, or maybe not necessarily that people, but these are people that came in later and put this header in there. But the text itself never refers to this as the genealogy of Jesus Christ. However, most people refer to it that way. And I've noticed this for a long time, that this never claims to be his genealogy. But let's look at the couple verses right before it, because I think this is significant to why this list of names is here. Let's see. Verse 21 says, now when all the people were baptized, it came to pass that Jesus, also being baptized and praying, the heaven was opened, and the Holy Ghost descended in a bodily shape like a dove upon him, and a voice from heaven which said, thou art my beloved Son, in thee I am well pleased. Okay, this is right. Okay, this just happened, and now the author says in verse 23, and Jesus himself began to be about 30 years of age, being, as was supposed, the son of Joseph, which was the son of Heli. Okay, if you can notice right here in verse 23, this word, the son, the son of Joseph. There's in the Greek, that word for son is there. But over here, you see it's italicized, which was the son of Heli. That son, that word, there is no Greek word for son there. That's been put in by the translator to help, I guess, bring understanding to this list of names. But the word the son of Joseph only appears right there for the son. But anyway, that's just something to note. But this list of names goes all the way, not back to Abraham and not back to Adam. Everybody says, oh, this is a list of names that goes all the way back to Adam. It goes all the way back to God. And this is why I think the author included the list of names here, is because Jesus, or Yeshua, had just been declared, "Thou art my beloved son," by a voice from heaven, which we presume to be God. And then he goes on to explain this whole list of names, tracing it all the way back to God. But if we notice, the father, or Joseph, is of Heli, which is different than what Matthew said. Matthew said Joseph is the son, or Jacob begat Joseph. Well, if you go up further, where the common David in verse 31, which was the son of Meliah, which was the son of Mainan, which was the son of Mattatha, which was the son of Nathan, which was the son of David. Okay, this is not David, this is not Solomon here. This is a different line of David. David had another son, and had a son named Nathan, which we can verify in the Old Testament. But this is a different leg. Now, it's commonly taught that this list of names is a genealogy of Mary. There is a tradition, or I'm not sure exactly where it came from, but there is an understanding that people think Heli is Mary's father. And that in verse 23, where it says, being as was supposed the son of Joseph, which was of Heli, they think that Joseph was the son-in-law of Heli, and that this is showing some kind of a legal relationship of Joseph tied back to David by way of Nathan's leg, and it's because he's married to Mary, and so therefore, so anyway, this is the traditional teaching as to who this list of names belongs to. It's actually Mary's father, and Joseph is by law, or a son-in-law of Heli and everybody else above him. I personally have had problems with that explanation for a long time, because Mary is not mentioned anywhere in this chapter. Anywhere in the whole chapter of Luke 3. She is mentioned in in Luke 1 and in Luke 2. And in fact, we have the whole story about the birth of Jesus in Luke 2. And yet it's not until he's 30 years old that we're getting a list of names of who his supposed genealogy is. And it's supposed to be actually Mary's list of names, but yet Mary's never mentioned. It never resonated with me. But I didn't have an answer for it. I had an idea. My idea was that they were reasoning how Jesus could be called the Son of God, and they knew that he was the son of Joseph. But maybe they had rejected the idea that Solomon was righteous, because of how Solomon had reigned. He started out good. He started out strong. He When he could have anything he wanted, he asked for wisdom, and he got wisdom and wealth, and he built the temple, and he did a lot of wonderful things and demonstrated his wisdom. But in the end, he strayed, and big time. And the kingdom was rent from him, not during his reign, but during the reign of his son, because of his behavior. So I'm thinking that maybe the people were reasoning, it wasn't enough for Yeshua to be born the son of David through Solomon, because Solomon wasn't righteous, maybe in their mind. I mean, that was like the reasoning I was trying to think. Well, why would they do this? But I couldn't understand the connection between Joseph and Heli. Well, this week, I was listening to a bunch of, let me stop this for a minute. I was listening to a bunch of videos, YouTube videos on various YouTube genealogy teachings, preachings, different people talking about the genealogy of Jesus Christ, particularly Matthew, because I was doing something with studying that. And I wanted to hear all the different arguments out there to be sure to address everything that people were talking about. And I stumbled across this one video. I will put it in the chat if you have not seen it, but I will share this also. I don't know if we're going to be able to watch it. I'm going to share a picture of it so you can at least see it. Okay, the video is called The Genealogy of Jesus Christ According to Eusebius. It's not that long. It's only about 7.5 minutes long. It's a little, I found it at first when I was listening to it, I was like, boy, this sounds a little obnoxious, because it kind of goes, is it this? Is it that? Is it this? And it's all over the place. And I almost tuned it out because I was like, oh, man, this is too, I felt like I was watching The Princess Bride. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, where the short guy is arguing with the giant, and should I take this cup or should I take that cup? And just all this, it was kind of obnoxious in a way. But I hung in there, and as I was listening to it, he made an argument, not just the guy that was talking, not just that it was his own reasoning, but he referred to an historical document by Eusebius in a book called The Ecclesiastical History, by him, and he had included information in there. In fact, I think it's in the comments here. Here. The information in the video can be found in Eusebius's Ecclesiastical History, Book 1, Chapter 7. And I'm not sure if he actually quotes it. All right. I don't know if we can watch the video on here, if it will show. Do you think I should try it? I had wanted to watch it, and then I wanted us to discuss it. All right, all right, how about we just try and watch it? Is that okay? I've got one person that I can visually see. Okay, yes, I'll say, hang in there. Here it goes.
Does the genealogy in Matthew contradict the genealogy in Luke? In the book of Matthew, chapter 1, it gives a genealogy from Abraham all the way down to Jesus. And in Luke chapter 3, it gives a genealogy from Jesus all the way up to Adam. In Matthew chapter 1, it says that Jacob begot Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. It says here that Jacob begot Joseph, which would mean that Jacob is the father of Joseph. However, in Luke chapter 3, it says that Joseph was the son of Heli, which would mean that Heli is the father of Joseph. So in Matthew chapter 1, it says that Jacob is the father of Joseph, but in Luke chapter 3, it says that Heli is the father of Joseph. So one book says that Jacob's the father, the other book says that Heli is the father. So the question is who's the father? Is Jacob the father, or is Heli the father, or are Jacob and Heli the same person? Well, they can't be the same person because Jacob's father is Methan, Heli's father is Methat. They have different fathers. They have different grandfathers. They have different great-grandfathers. They have different great-great-grandfathers. They have different genealogies. So how could Joseph have two different fathers with two different genealogies? Well, there's a 4th century historian by the name of Eusebius who explains this supposed discrepancy in the genealogy of Christ. In Eusebius's Ecclesiastical History, in Book 1, Chapter 7, page 21, second paragraph, second sentence, he says, Heli and Jacob were brothers by the same mother. Heli, dying childless, Jacob raised up seed to him, having Joseph according to nature belonging to himself, but by law to Heli, thus Joseph was the son of both. According to Eusebius, Jacob and Heli were brothers. In Deuteronomy 25:5, it says, If brothers dwell together, and one of them dies and has no son, the widow of the dead man shall not be married to a stranger outside the family. Her husband's brother shall go into her, take her as his wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And it shall be that the firstborn son which she bears will succeed to the name of his dead brother, that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. Basically, what the scripture verse is saying is that when a man and a woman get married without having any children, and then something happens and the man dies childless, his widow must not marry outside the family, but rather her husband's brother shall take her and marry her and fulfill the duty of a brother-in-law to her, and the first son that she gives birth to shall carry on the name of the dead brother, even though the living brother is the one who begot the child. The child still must be recognized by law as the son of the dead brother, so that his name is not blotted out from Israel. In the book of Matthew, it says that Jacob begot Joseph. However, in the book of Luke, it says that Joseph was the son of Heli. Eusebius points out here that Luke entirely omits the expression he begot because it's not possible for two different men to have begotten the same child. However, it is possible for one man to have begotten the child while the child is recognized by law as the son of another man, according to the law of Deuteronomy 25:5. And according to the history handed down by Eusebius, this is exactly what happened. Jacob was the living brother, and Heli was the dead brother. Heli and Jacob were brothers by the same mother. Heli, dying childless, Jacob raised up seed to him, having Joseph according to nature belonging to himself, but by law to Heli, thus Joseph was the son of both. The question is, though, how could Jacob and Heli be brothers when Jacob's father is Methan and Heli's father is Methat? They have different fathers. They have different genealogies. So how could Jacob and Heli possibly be brothers? Well, Eusebius explains that Methan, whose descent is traced to Solomon, begot Jacob. Methan dying, Methat, whose lineage is traced from Nathan by marrying the widow of the former, had Heli, hence Heli and Jacob were brothers by the same mother. If you didn't quite catch all that, then let me quickly illustrate what's being said here. According to Eusebius, Methan, whose lineage is traced to Solomon, married a woman by the name of Esther. They together had a son named Jacob. Then something happened to where Methan died. However, since Methan had a son to carry on his name, his widow is free to marry outside the family, and that's exactly what she did. She married a man by the name of Methat from a different family with a different genealogy, whose lineage is traced to Nathan, the son of David. Then they together had a son named Heli. Thus Jacob and Heli are brothers by the same mother, though they had different fathers with different genealogies. Then, when Jacob and Heli grew up, Heli married a woman, but before they could have any children, Heli died childless. So his widow was required by law not to marry outside the family. So Jacob took her as his wife, fulfilled the duty of a brother-in-law to her, raising up seed to him, having Joseph, who by nature belonged to himself, but by law belonged to Heli. So when the book of Matthew says that Jacob begot Joseph, that's true. But when the book of Luke says that Joseph was the son of Heli, that's also true. Neither of the Gospels have made a false statement. Both accounts are true. All this information can be found in Eusebius' Ecclesiastical History in Book 1, Chapter 7, pages 19 through 21. You can buy this book on Amazon.com for just $20. Now, there's some people who give a much different explanation of the genealogies, and they say things like this.
The church historian Eusebius, writing in the early 4th century, records that separate genealogies appear for the following reason. Jesus had both the biological mother, Mary, and a legal but not biological father, Joseph. Matthew records Jesus' genealogy by the law through his adopted father, Joseph, and Luke reports the genealogy of nature through his biological mother, Mary. According to Eusebius' Ecclesiastical History, Julius Africanus, a 3rd century church father, explained this alleged contradiction in his letter to Aristides.
According to this guy, the genealogy in Matthew is that of Joseph, and the one in Luke is of Mary, which would mean that when the book of Luke says that Joseph was the son of Heli, what it means is that Joseph is the son-in-law of Heli, which would mean that Heli is the father of Mary, and Joseph married his daughter. And in order to back up his claim, he references Eusebius' Ecclesiastical History, Book 1, Chapter 7. Well, I own Eusebius' Ecclesiastical History, and I looked up Book 1, Chapter 7, and according to Eusebius, Heli died childless. He says, Heli, dying childless, Jacob raised up seed to him. So how could Mary be the daughter of Heli when Heli died childless? According to Eusebius, Joseph is not the son-in-law of Heli. He's the son of Heli according to the law. Not according to the law of marriage, but according to the law of Deuteronomy 25:5, the law of a brother-in-law, when a man raises up seed to his dead brother. So I don't know where this guy got his information, but he definitely did not get it from Eusebius like he claims. According to Eusebius, both genealogies are of Joseph, neither are of Mary.
Okay. Did you hear that? It looked like you might have heard that. It looked like you could hear it. So let's get some feedback from that. I know what I thought. When I heard that, I was like, that makes the most sense of anything that I've heard thus far. Now, Eusebius, from what I understand, or Eusebius, however you say it, is from the 3rd or 4th century. So this is not, in the days of Yeshua. It's after that. But he probably had access to documents that we don't have access to anymore. So he may have had more information to go on to come up with names. Like, I guess he said something about the mother's name of one of the brothers, or actually both the brothers, I guess. So it's plausible, in my opinion, and knowing what Deuteronomy 25 says regarding, producing seed for your brother when you're, you know what I'm saying. What Deuteronomy 25 says, it's legit. I mean, it's a legitimate explanation, and it fits in my mind of, okay, well, I'll stop talking right now and open it up to let you guys respond to anyone who might have heard that, or if you have any thoughts on that, I'll give you a chance to speak.
So the Nathan that is mentioned here could possibly be the son of David and not the prophet.
Yes, Nathan would be the son of David. Okay, so Nathan he didn't reign as king. Nathan was just another one of David's sons. So this particular line demonstrates that he is a son of David, this other line, but he's not of the royal dynasty of sons. This particular line given in Luke. The line given in Matthew that's the Davidic line, or the Davidic dynasty line of kings that reigned. Now, my rationale of why they chose to include this list as opposed to the other list of Yeshua's or excuse me, Joseph's natural father, is because, all right, if we go back to the beginning of Luke, I'm going to share this on the screen. I'm going to try and share it here. Share Luke. Okay, if we go back to chapter 1 of Luke, we need to remember whenever we're reading stuff, we really need to consider the context. And you know, if you're going to read about what Luke has to say in chapter 3, you might as well go back to chapter 1 and read everything leading up to it, because that will help. I think it helps bring understanding to what comes later. In this first chapter, I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but down in verses 26 through 38 is where we hear the story of the angel Gabriel coming to Mary to tell her about a future conception that she's going to experience. And in this message that is given to her, it says, verse 30, and the angel said unto her, Fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favor with God, and behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb, and bring forth a son, and shalt call his name Jesus, or Yeshua, or Yehoshua, or however you pronounce it. He shall be great, and shall be called the Son of the Highest. And the Lord God shall give unto him the throne of his father David, and he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there shall be no end. Okay, and then again in verse 35, he says, all right, well, I might as well just read it in context. Verse 34 says, Then said Mary unto the angel, How shall this be, seeing I know not a man? And the angel answered and said unto her, The Holy Ghost shall come upon thee, and the power of the highest shall overshadow thee. Therefore also that holy thing, that which shall be born of thee, shall be called the Son of God. Okay? In both of these verses, verse 35 and verse 32, it says, shall be called the Son. Shall be, right here, shall be called the Son of God. Okay? This, when I read this, I think of 2 Samuel chapter 7. This is the promise that was made to David concerning his offspring that would come from his body. Where are we? Go back. 2 Samuel chapter 7. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you can read it on your own. 2 Samuel starting in verse 1. Essentially, David had it in his mind. He wanted to build a house for the Ark of the Covenant, for Yahweh. And Nathan initially, the prophet Nathan, not his son, this is somebody else, the prophet Nathan had told him, go ahead, do what, do what's in your heart. But then Yahweh comes to Nathan and says, no, I want you to tell Nathan this. And then proceeds to tell him all that's following here. And then Nathan turns around and tells David. Now in this, I'm going to go right down to verse 12. And when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build an house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commit iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men, and with the stripes of the children of men. But my mercy shall not depart away from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before thee. And thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever. Okay, so all of this, I can't help but not think of that when I hear what the messenger tells Mary. Okay, So she's told twice that the child she's going to conceive and bring forth is going to be called the Son of God. And fast forward, I'm not going to read through all of this because I'm going to just go right to what we're talking about with the. Now, in this this next chapter, we're told about the birth of Yeshua, okay? And we hear about the angels appearing to the shepherds. Then when the child, when the days of Mary's purification according to the law were accomplished, they brought the child to Jerusalem. And while they're there, Simeon says something regarding the child. And another woman comes in, Anna, says something regarding what Simeon was talking about. And then the author of Luke later tells a story about the time when the child was 12 years old. They went up to Jerusalem, and some things had taken place there. When the feast was over, Joseph and Mary and the rest of the family headed back home, but Yeshua had stayed behind and was talking with the teachers of the law and various people there in the temple. And Joseph and Mary had to come back to find him. And in this encounter, Mary identifies Joseph as his father. In verse 48 here, and when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said unto him, Son, why hast thou thus dealt with us? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing. And he said unto them, How is it that ye sought me? Wist ye not that I must be about my father's business? And they understood not the saying which he spake unto them. And he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was subject unto them. But his mother kept all these sayings in her heart. Okay, I'm bringing this up because here you see Mary is referring to Jesus' father, Joseph, as his father. But Jesus, or Yeshua, is identifying more at this point with the Heavenly Father, saying, How is it that you sought me? Well, the wording here in King James is kind of tongue-tying. But he refers to his father's business. And at first, it says that Mary and Joseph, they didn't understand what he was talking about. Obviously, us reading the Bible, we understand he was talking about Yahweh, God, the Heavenly Father. But she kept these sayings in her heart. She didn't know that the day that Yeshua was baptized, a voice from heaven was going to declare, This is my son. She had no idea that that was going to happen. She was familiar, I'm sure, with the words that were spoken to David concerning, his seed that would come after him and the kingdom and a house that would be built for his name. She was familiar with that kind of stuff, but she didn't know how everything was going to play out, But she kept these sayings in her heart. Then we get over to chapter 3, and this is where John the Baptist is on the scene, and many years have gone by because, as we read, when Yeshua was being baptized, in the beginning of this list of names, it says he's about 30 years old. So a lot of time has gone by, and he's just been declared the Son of God. And now the author decides to tell us a whole list of names, bringing us from Joseph all the way up to God. And he does so through not Solomon, but through David. And my hunch, I'm taking a really long time to get to my bottom line point here. My hunch is that prophecy that was given to David, or to Nathan to give to David, the prophet Nathan given to David about his seed, everybody in their mind understands the fulfillment of that prophecy was with Solomon. Why? Because Solomon reigned as king right after David, and Solomon built the temple, which was a house unto Yahweh's name. So naturally, Solomon is the one that filled that prophecy, right? But Solomon failed. He did not, now if I knew right off the top of my head, I would go right to it. For the sake of time, maybe I'll look for it while we start discussing amongst ourselves. But where it talks about when Solomon, he had taken all these other wives, and in the taking of these other wives, other gods had come into the picture. That there was erecting images and, I don't know, just places of worship of these other gods in the land of Israel. And just things got worse. And Solomon failed to follow in his father David's footsteps. He strayed away. And as a result of these things, he was told that the kingdom would be ripped from him. But for the sake of David, his father, it wasn't going to happen during Solomon's reign, but it would happen thereafter. And it did. It happened during Rehoboam's reign, which was the son of Solomon. And so now, things have gone not as according to as planned. Now, the kingdom, David's throne was established and maintained. There was someone who was always sitting on David's throne all the way up to the Babylonian captivity, but it wasn't through Solomon. I mean, it wasn't Solomon. You understand what I'm saying? Solomon wasn't the reason why things continued on David's throne. It continued on David's throne because of David, not because of Solomon. So my thinking is that while there was a fulfillment in Solomon of that prophecy, a greater fulfillment was being seen in the days of Yeshua as being the Son of God, who will build a house for his name, not a house like a temple, but a household. And I've said this before. Do I want to go there? Okay, I'm going to not go there right now. I'm going to stop sharing this. Yeah. So here you have Yeshua building a house for his father's name, Yahweh's name, in a household of believers, a household of faith. And his kingdom is being established as he is the anointed of as he is the anointed of God, chosen, and he is the son, and Yahweh is his father, and he carries out, immediately after this chapter, Luke 3, it goes into Luke 4. It's when he's led into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil, and in those temptations, the devil says, if you are the Son of God, then do such and such. And, and he's testing him. And he's using that as a qualifier. If you're the Son of God, do this. And Yeshua responds, well, no, it's written, blah, blah, blah. Don't tempt the Lord your God, or man cannot live on bread alone, or whatever scripture he throws back at him to counter whatever test the devil throws at him. Eventually, he comes out of the wilderness, and his ministry begins. And then all four of the Gospels talk about the ministry of Yeshua after his baptism. So yeah, okay. So I'll stop. I'll pause right there. So I think that the people were reasoning how Yeshua could be called Son of God. And they may have, maybe the author of Luke was rejecting the notion of the royal line qualifying him as being called the Son of God, and chose the legal line by way of Joseph's father by law, not father-in-law, but father by law, because he was of a line that was not Solomon's line, but he was still of the line of David. So what do you think? I'm going to take a drink of water.
Is anybody going to say anything?
You say something, Ty.
Okay. I think there's a lot of things to talk about. I think there's a lot of ideas running around my head. How about talking about the temple? It seems that everybody always wants to look to the firstborn, like when they were choosing David as king. He was the last guy in line. He was the kid out in the field taking care of they run all the other brothers through and they say, no, it's not him, it's not him, it's not him. So the tendency is to always look at the firstborn or the big thing going on. So with that tendency, Matthew may have even done that, tracing the lineage of the Messiah through the Davidic kingship line, assuming it was Solomon, bringing it down that way. And this is how he reckoned to the people that would be interested in the line of the Messiah, to his audience, he was reckoning it out. However, he was not seeing the whole picture. The author of Luke offers us an insight where Solomon was nullified, yet there's another way to make it work. And he's bringing it down to this other lineage. It would be more of a secondary thought, but it's the way that actually worked. It was the smaller path to get to where you're going, not so grand looking. So I think it lends legitimacy to the idea. It's not the big flashy thing. It's a different line. That's one thought I had. It's the same line, but it's a different way of looking at it. And then looking at the death of these fathers, it seems like there was a contract out on this lineage. There was an enemy at work trying to end this line. That's why you have these fathers dying in there. But through obedience to Deuteronomy, with the brothers stepping in, it's a restoration and a continuance of the inheritance. It's a way that it worked, despite, hitman coming in and taking out some guys. Mm-hmm. So by obeying Torah, they made a path. And I like that. I like seeing that. And then I had some other secondary thoughts. What if the guy already had a wife and he's supposed to take his brother's wife? That's a complete tangent thought, but that's one thing I did think of. It seems to lend its credence to the idea of multiple wives. And I think the whole thing about Deuteronomy, the law, is to continue the inheritance on the land, to make sure that the piece that you had from your father doesn't get distributed elsewhere. It stays with you. Even if you get taken out for whatever reason, your brother's going to step in and you're going to have an inheritor to your line. So I think that's important from like a patriarchal position, to make sure the inheritance that Israel stays intact in the land. It's always about the land contracts. It's an important part of the aspect of being here. And I'm not sure that's appreciated enough or talked about enough. There's a lot of wisdom written into that. With the brother stepping in, that solves a lot of would-be issues. Even in our culture, it would solve a lot of problems. That was just some of the thoughts I had. This isn't everything I had to say. That was just some of my takeaways. And I think I had some more. I just can't remember them all. So, what do you think of that?
Cool. I have a couple counter thoughts on what you were just saying. I'll work backwards. I like what you said about the land. I think also it has to do with the name not being blotted out, because if you don't have any children to carry on your name, I think of my aunt. My aunt died without any children, and eventually she'll be forgotten. Because naturally, when you have children, your children remember you, but not necessarily your extended family. And over time, you can be easily forgotten. So I agree that the land was a big thing, but I also think that the name, having your name not blotted out, was another reason for that. Another thought, I like what you said about dying.
Okay, I wanted to say that the land and the name are kind of synonymous. It's kind of both of them together. It's not either or. It's
right.
They work together.
They're hand in hand. I wouldn't necessarily say synonymous, but
okay.
Yes,
they're part of the whole thing.
Yes, I agree. Okay. The thing that you said about the dying, with the enemy trying to thwart things, man, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, that goes right in with Matthew and the concerns for the child and all that. It plays right in.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Well, I mean, I've just been reading a lot on the kings, the history of the kings of Judah, and all that was going on, even beyond what we've shared about before in the Zoom room. But yes, the enemy trying to thwart things. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was what your first point about the last kid. I wanted to clarify. I don't think that Solomon was disqualified. I think that when I was saying what I was saying, I meant in the mind. Now, he was probably disqualified in the mind of God too, because I think, I have a tendency that we all think that, oh yeah, sure, Solomon will, he'll make it. But I don't know. From what I understand, it's how you end in your days, not how you start in your days, to determine how you're going to end up later. So I'm not casting or making judgment necessarily, but so this idea of being disqualified, I guess it depends on according to who. But I think that Matthew chose to give the lineage that he gave in the way that he gave it, was purposeful and spot on. I mean, I think that he had a message to communicate, and we just have to learn understand what his message was. And Luke had a message he was trying to communicate, and we just need to understand what he was trying to say. Because in Matthew's genealogy, it was needful for the physical son of David to be the Messiah. It doesn't matter if you're the son by law. That is not the promise that was given to David. It was about a son that would come from his loins. So it had to be a physical son. So I think that was the purpose.
Yeah. I wanted to clarify. I want to qualify the word disqualified that I use with Solomon.
Okay.
Not right now, but
okay.
I agree with you.
Okay. So that was all I had. I wanted to say. I wanted to make sure that Matthew doesn't get the short end of the stick, because I think that Matthew actually is is awesome. When you are forced to study out the little things in that genealogy, the little deviations, why does he mention Judah and his brothers? Why not just mention just Judah? Why does he mention Jeconiah and his brothers? Why is Jeconiah counted twice in there? Just little details. And when you start digging that out, oh my goodness, I think a lot more comes to light. So I think his genealogy is very genius. personally, but that's only because I've been studying it. Okay, that's all I want to say. So someone
Anybody
else can say, or
I
Todd.
have some more to say, but I was going to let somebody else say something if they want to.
Okay, somebody else want to chime in on what we've been talking about?
Okay, I was not. I agree with what you say about Matthew, and I agree his testimony is good. I don't think he saw all the pieces. I think he was looking at it from the more strict, traditional, legalistic lawyer, more of that traditional mindset. And I think Luke was looking at it more from a spiritual aspect. And trying to say that it's like everybody, even today, it's the same thing going on. Everybody's looking for the new temple to come along, and that's where God's going to be. You know, the Most High is going to be in that new temple, and we're waiting for all this system to come back in place. And it never was about that. The household that the Messiah made is a different temple. It's a different building. It's a different way of looking at it. The Son it's different than what most people are expecting to see, but it's right out in the open. I think Luke has a little bit better handle on understanding that. Because there's a lot of, I don't even know where they're all at, but I think it's in Acts, I think it's in Amos and some other places, probably in Isaiah. It talks about, it's kind of like ripping on the temple a little bit. It's like, that's really not what he wanted. He doesn't dwell in that place. It was that way for a time, but they lost the Ark of the Covenant. They lost the dwelling place. That's like that never was the plan. But everybody's trying to figure out from that line of thinking, if I'm explaining that, even maybe Matthew was doing that a little bit, the author of Matthew. Am I making sense? No.
No, I think you're making sense. I don't agree with thinking that Matthew, I don't think Matthew was in opposition to what you're saying. I think Matthew was focusing on communicating a lot of different things. I think that you're right that people generally have like a one-track mind as to how they read things, and they're only looking at it from a particular vantage point, and so they only get out of it what they're looking for.
Well, the point, my general point is like the reason nobody considered David is the exact way that things work. It's like, including, I think that I'm trying to compare what Matthew is saying to what Luke is saying, somewhat like that. I'm not saying Matthew didn't get it. But he's explaining it to these people better than Luke would. Luke has a different, more spiritual insight.
Well, they had different audiences for sure.
Right. I think Luke was probably later too. I think Matthew was probably earlier than Luke. That just intuition, I don't have any evidence, but.
Well, I definitely think that they were different. They had different approaches and they had different audiences. I think
there's a lot to look at here with this idea, a lot to talk about. There's a lot of different roads to it, a lot of different aspects, facets. So I'm ready to talk about anything. I think there's a lot of different points to talk about here. I could definitely go for the overall. I could see it working. It actually helps things to gel, in my opinion. Just ties up some loose ends. There's a lot of loose ends, the way we've been looking at things, and this really helps with that. So.
Did you have anything you wanted to say, Anson or Kay or anybody in the household there? I saw someone sitting in the hot seat there, like they were ready to talk. You don't have to if you don't have something to say.
Just say something, Anson. Put him in the hot seat. He's got something to say.
No, it's a lot of things to take in. I mean, genealogy always does. So like probably just questions like why, like, yeah, I was wondering before, like, why Nathan instead of Solomon, why this person instead of that person, like, so very different. But when Ty mentioned the possibility that, this lineage is being, that somebody's trying to take out the lineage, just people dying one after the other, and then, yeah, that could be an explanation. I'm open to that. And did
I like the idea of a very thin thread, just barely making it through. It's like almost extinguished, that fire almost put out, but then just squeaks by, just barely, with just a little divine intervention, a little bit of obedience by the right people, and it's still going on. It's like watching these old movies where they try to kill the prince. They go in, kill the king, and wipe out the whole family, and nobody's left, but that one little kid gets out and comes back later to be king. It's that kind of idea. I just put it for real, in Israel history. I like that idea of just little barely deliverance, like a little baby in the Nile in a little basket type of. And I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry. Just
No. You're so right, and it amazes me again how Father makes this Torah on what the Jews call the levirate marriage, and it's there for a reason bigger than what we think it is.
It's like prophetic. It's like prophetic. The right people,
yes,
obeyed at the right time and carried prophecy forward. It carried the whole thing. By choice. I mean, anyway.
You're
a
right.
little bit of obedience. That guy was like, I don't want that woman, but I'm going to do it, or whatever.
So it's like it's prophetic and it's profound, and I wonder what else in Torah, because there's nothing random about it. Everything has a reason when Father spoke all those instructions, and this is one big connection. I mean, if this is spot on, then this is one big connection to his instruction. Yeah, but would you know if Eusebius had explained in detail the other people in Luke?
I don't know. I'm going to order that book. I mean, I might as well have it in my library. But yeah, I'd be interested in seeing it. He refers to documents for his information.
He probably has some pretty good footnotes.
Yeah.
Of stuff we probably don't even have. But at least we'll know he had it.
Yes. Yeah, that was my point. I want to piggyback off what you said before, Kay, about it just goes to show how important seed is to the Almighty, how important it is. And there's a thin thread all throughout, because like Matthew highlights, pulling these, when he identifies the different women in that lineage, if you look at the circumstances surrounding each one of those instances, talk about a thin line. Tamar, she was a widow twice before she ended up getting, with Judah. But one of the problems that we have is that we've inherited so many paradigms that have been etched in our brain, like this is the way and this is all we're supposed to look at, and that we don't think outside of that. But when you do open up and see these other things, like what Ty is saying with this thin thread, and what you just said, Kay, how vital these laws that are put in place, and we don't understand exactly why, why he would put that law in place. Now it's becoming abundantly more clear. And for me, this just shores up my stance, not that it needed any more shoring up, on the need for the Messiah to be a physical seed of David.
I think, yes, it definitely demonstrates the need for a physical line. I think that it gives glory to the Most High when these narrow set of circumstances, it's like, it is almost over. And one little thing happened and they just squeezed by. And how many times does that have to happen until you say, you know what, there's a little divine intervention here. There's somebody watching out here. He's not interfering much, but he's helping at the right time just to barely have deliverance, barely have things make it on to go to where it needs to go. Happened time and time again. Like you said, a very thin thread. So that's like glory to the Most High. And also it shows the need of obedience to his ways. It glorifies his ways, and the wisdom of his instructions. That people obeying that is what actually allowed it to happen, and they didn't even know it. They were the vessel for that. When what's her name was more righteous to get a husband and all that, that's glory to the ways of the Most High and the wisdom of what she stuck to it and did what she was supposed to do. And because of that, everything after, it's just so much beyond coincidence.
Yeah, because
it's like astounding, amazing. It's an amazing story.
Yes.
It's like, wow, they barely made it out again. How did it happen?
Even Judah confirmed that. Judah, are you talking about Tamar? Yes,
I think
Judah confirmed that she's more righteous than him.
Yeah. And yet when you hear the story, like I was just listening to another YouTube video on the genealogy, and they talk about the bad girls of Matthew's genealogy, the bad girls. And he lumps these 4 women as being bad, prostitutes and committed, incest or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? If anybody's bad in this line, it's the boys. Look what David did. It wasn't Bathsheba who committed adultery. It was David taking another man's wife. She was minding her own business on top of her own roof, and he went and got her and took her. And then when she got pregnant, he covered it up by killing her husband and making her a widow. And yet we have been conditioned to see it like, oh, Bathsheba, she's the adulterous woman who, you know what I mean? It's like, no, she was robbed of her own, by David. But yet David is so, it's just funny how, but my point is with Judah and Tamar, how messy things get and how all is lost. Tamar, her first husband dies, her second husband dies, and then she was due to have the other brother, but was sent to go back and stay with her father, only to find out that, you know what, my father-in-law is not going to do what he said he was going to do. And she resorted to what she resorted to get the thing accomplished. And then look, she had twins. And the twins that she had are the only children that had any children thereafter. And yet Judah was the one who was going to carry the seed that was going to rule over all of Israel. I mean, talk about a thin thread. And messy stuff. And yet how Yahweh comes in and still manages to work his plan. Awesome.
Yes. I don't know if you've discussed this already, but what do you think would be the significance of, we know that Matthew has the physical genealogy, and you were saying that this one could be the legal genealogy. So what is the significance of Luke writing the or making it known, the legal lineage, do you think?
The disobedience of Solomon, the way he went astray, it would seem to nullify the line. It would seem like in Deuteronomy it says those who obey will be blessed for many generations, but those who disobey, they'll be cursed to the second, third, or fourth generation or whatever. I kind of go with that way of thinking. It's like, how can Solomon's line be blessed? Even though that's the line that we should be watching, that's the Davidic line. But again, it's not the big fancy son. It's the secondary lesser son that nobody was really paying attention to. And actually, that's the guy. I mean, that's almost like how David was. That's always the lesser. It's always, I think I'm like part of the little thin thread. I feel like I'm the underdog. You know, the underdogs are always the one that ends up being the one that carry the ball forward. So that's what I think Luke is saying. I mean,
yeah, and when spiritually, I think you made a comment about to carry the ball forward spiritually, because he obviously didn't carry the ball forward physically, because this is not the physical genealogy of Joseph. This is the genealogy in name, the legal right.
But it's the son of David.
Yes.
That's what's important. It's just everybody's looking at the wrong line, even though it converges. I mean,
right. But what I'm saying, honey, is that he's a son of David by way of Solomon. He's a physical son of David by way of Solomon, but he's a spiritual son of David by way of Nathan, because he's following in the footsteps of David, not Solomon.
That's
Solomon,
what I was trying to say earlier,
okay.
basically.
Yes.
Yes.
So that was my point, was identifying.
That's how I was contrasting Matthew and Luke. What
Right.
you're saying right there.
So in a way, it's kind of like being cut off because of disobedience.
Yeah, exactly. And
Because that's what it says. That
yeah,
his ways will not be mocked. You don't get to bring in pagan gods into the land because of your wives. You're bringing all kinds of problems in. That's the end. That's always happened. He did right in the eyes of the Most High. This king did right. This king did wrong. Solomon did wrong. The end of it. I mean,
yeah. And another thing to remember, see, that's just, and I agree with what Ty has been saying, and this idea of everyone focusing on, there is a time and a place to focus on the seed, a time and a place to talk about the physical aspects of it. But then there is a time and place to talk about the spiritual aspects. And right now, with this virgin birth doctrine that we have all inherited, has muddied the waters, because this virgin birth doctrine has produced this hybrid, strange species of a man that's both God and man, and yet, you know, we can't wrap our mind around it. It's a mystery. And because of that, because we can't wrap our minds around it, we just like, oh, okay, we just take it on faith and we go with whatever, you know, we go with that. But we have to be able to wrap our minds around it. Our God, you know, our Creator made us with minds to be able to wrap around ideas. And He wants us to understand His truth. And the truth is, we are flesh beings who have human mothers and fathers that produced us. But God is not a flesh being. God is the creator of the flesh beings. And God is not the one, He is the one who gives us our spirit, right? And how we live our lives and what we do with the bodies that we've been given and the spirit that we've been given, how we function, that determines whether we're born from above or not. Our being born from above is not about our DNA, it's not about our genealogy. Our being born from above is a spiritual experience and how we live our lives demonstrating who our heavenly Father or who our Father is on a spiritual level. And that's what we have to really, we kind of have to rework and understand. Go
So
ahead.
to me, when Matthew opens up saying, "This is Yeshua, this the son of David, the son of Abraham," I would think that Matthew is more focusing on the son of David, and that Luke is focusing more on the son of Abraham as according to the promise of the seed spiritually. To a different line, the spiritual line, like we're saying, they both work. They're both part of it. So, and yes, what you're saying about being begotten of the Most High, He's a spirit being. We're born of the Spirit. It messes it up for the rest of us if you had to be born of a virgin to be a son of the Most High. There's no hope for anybody else. We can be begotten of the Spirit to be sons of the Most High. Many of us, not just by using some name, using a magic name.
And not just
the
physical seed of Israel either. It opens it up to every human being has the ability to be a son of God. It's not just a DNA thing. It's not just tied to you have to be a physical descendant for all of us to be the son of God. Now, for the Messiah, the anointed one, that had to be a physical seed. But the rest?
I go back and forth on this Israel thing. Sometimes I think it is all about Israel, and sometimes I think it's not. But I think we just need to redefine Israel as the firstborn. I think all of the if we're an earlier crop than most of the world at this point now in time, there's already other harvests before us. But if we're part of the early harvest, we're part of the firstborn. We're probably Israel, depending on how you want to define the word. So I go back and forth on it. I think the first fruits are Israel. But that's a tangent. Sorry.
What do you mean you go back and forth about Israel?
I was like, well, we could be of all the nations. Well, I don't have to be Israel. And then I'm like, well, maybe I am Israel. I mean, my own personal identity. Sometimes I feel like I'm an Israelite and sometimes I don't. I've come back around to thinking now I'm an Israelite, but not under the context of what everybody else, the mainstream thought of what Israel is. I don't think I'm that. It's a matter of defining the term. So we may all be Israelites after all. I doubted that for a while.
Yeah, at this point, I think there's so much confusion. Nobody knows. As far as what your physical DNA is, if you're really physically a child of Israel, Jacob, at this point, nobody knows. People can identify, maybe they can try, but nobody knows for sure.
Matter, though.
It's being born of the Spirit that matters anyway.
Yes, I agree.
That's what I'm thinking too. Like, it doesn't matter. The physical, it's secondary to the spiritual.
It matters. It matters in one regard, but it doesn't matter in another regard. So, yeah, I agree.
And I've read somewhere about that name Israel, like it's hijacked, twisted form of Yasser El, which is how it's supposed to be, because Yasser El means the righteous of El, or the righteous one before El. Whereas Israel, it's well, this is just, I think, I don't know, it's speculation. So it's like Isis, Ra, and El. When I saw that, I said, oh, okay, that's why they chose that name for the nation right now. When it's supposed to begin with a yod, not an I. So I'm open to that possibility that, that's not Israel is incorrect. So either genealogy, it will point to the Messiah being fully human, like his human being. And with someone like our youngest Joshua, because he was asking me, so what is the no virgin birth about? And so I said, in a nutshell, what we have been believing. And he said, it really doesn't make sense because Yahweh is not, he is not a human being, is he? I said, no. So how can he make how can he become a physical father if he's not physical? I mean, simple reasonings like that. And I said, you're right. I'm not going to say that. I'll just type it on the chat.
Yeah, this whole like I said, that whole virgin birth has muddied the waters, because not everyone believes it. There are a lot of Christians, I think, that don't buy the virgin birth, but they don't think that it's really that significant to make a fuss about it. They just live their lives, not believing it. Yes. But the teachings, though, that enforce it muddy the waters big time. Go ahead.
And it's the danger there is, like, I remember when I was a Christian in the Christian church, I remember our pastor saying that those Christian sects who don't believe that Jesus is God, they are cults, like Jehovah's Witnesses, and I don't know about the Mormons. So of course we're warned against them. We're told, be careful of them because they are cults. And in a way, I guess they are, because they follow one person. And I believe right now we are in a cult too, because we are following one person, Jesus the Messiah, Yahushua HaMashiach. We're following him. So, that's the definition of a cult, right? Following one person. Now that we know he is a person, he is not God. So we are in a cult too.
Yeah, I think it's amazing once you start wrapping your mind around this idea that he is a natural offspring, and everything else that's written in the New Testament about him is still true. It's not like, everything, now that changes everything. No, it just changes everything in our head. It changes everything in the way we understand things. It doesn't change anything about what else has been written. We just need to reassess. But really, like with what you were saying, your son said, the natural, if you accept it naturally, you'll see a whole lot more stuff that you never even saw before, because you had blinders on, because you were too busy thinking that Jesus was not just a human being. He was Superman. He was some kind of enhanced human being.
So I guess if in that sense, the question begging to be asked to the other camp would be, why the need for, writing genealogies of Jesus if he is not man? Like, why the need for Luke and Matthew to do that? What does it prove? Oh, yeah, that's right. He needs to be true man and true God.
Yeah, the thing that's the part that's so puzzling is it's kind of like the whole day subject. Nobody denies that the day begins in the morning. They just think it begins in the evening too. It's the same thing with Yeshua. Nobody denies Yeshua being a human being. Everybody believes he's a human. They just think he's God also. And it's like, okay, well, how do you have this argument? How do you, like the same thing with the day, how do you frame discussions with people who agree that the day begins in the morning? They just also think it begins in the evening. It's like, but that
You have
doesn't
to
make
have enough
sense.
faith to believe that 100% and 100% is 100%. You have to have a new math. So just believe. Stop. Believe. 100% man, 100% God equals 100%.
And they say that's the mystery. It's a mystery.
And that right there is the word of the enemy, in my opinion, because as long as it's a mystery, things that should not be a mystery, then you are ripe for deception. If you're just living based on, I'm holding on to this and I don't know why, but I am, then, you can be led down any which way, like I said, our Father gave us minds and the ability to comprehend things for a reason. And the way he operates, look, sure, there's passages that say his ways are not our ways, and we're not to lean on our own understanding. And, there's a lot of things that seem like it would deter us from using our own minds and trying to rationalize things. But we have to consider that in context of what they're talking about. And if Yahweh meant for us to never use our minds, then why did he give us minds? If we're supposed to just be robots and just do whatever without thinking about it, then why not make us that way? Would have resolved a whole lot of problems. We'd all just be obedient and everybody be, happy. But no. Hey, Niels, good to see you.
Hi. I was in the other room talking to some other brethren there over some things off and on, and then my wife just left a little while ago. I could hear you in the background, though. I just left the speaker on so I could hear somewhat.
So what do you...
Are the Angs still sending out the recordings?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you get last week's?
I don't think I looked for it, but the week before I did and watched it.
Yeah, so we send it out every week.
Yeah, okay. Just about everybody's gone now.
You're Carrie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know how many people might have overheard what I was saying.
Yes, because you know what? That's one thing that the Catholics are like challenging the Seventh-day Adventists. They say, okay, you keep the seventh-day Sabbath because the Bible says so. You go by sola scriptura because the Bible says so. So why do you believe in the Trinity? Because the Bible is not explicit about the Trinity. So that's a big one.
Yeah, I haven't had that confrontation yet, but I'm prepared for that. Some of the people here are SDA, and I don't know how they position themselves on that, but I've heard it in some of the lectures mention the Trinity or the Divine Trinity, so on.
I think it's really important for us, like, if we come out, we have to come out of everything.
Yeah, and another thing too was, I believe the second coming was not the rapture, but the first resurrection of the saints going to heaven.
That would be an interesting topic, eschatology.
Yeah.
Like, are we going to heaven? And because there seems to be, like in Revelation, there seems to be people in heaven with...
Well, I want to, is there anybody that wants to comment or say anything about what we've been talking about with the genealogy? Because if we're done with that, we can transition into something else if you guys want to talk about something else. Because we've been on here for, I would say, at least an hour talking on this.
I wanted to hear Anson.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm, yeah. I'm just listening. I'm just absorbing everything.
I think he'll talk later when, during our study time. But I'm very, very thankful, Carrie, that we don't have to continue in blind faith about our faith. Like it's really good that everything has a concrete explanation. Everything, like, there's nothing blind about our faith. So that is a big blessing for me, for our family.
One thing that I am really excited about, because I'm still studying the genealogy in Matthew, and when we don't understand something, I really believe that our Father will reveal to us what we need to understand when we need to understand it. But that doesn't mean that, well, I'm not going to ask anymore. I'm not going to look anymore. I don't understand it. I'll wait till Jesus comes back and he'll sort it all out. If we have that kind of attitude about how we approach things that we don't understand, then we stop growing. We just become stagnant and we are, only go so far and that's it. But if there's information, go ahead, Neil.
You want, like I told last week, you want to know what the picture looks like. You got some missing pieces. And when you find those missing pieces, you get a better picture of the final puzzle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he's got a beautiful puzzle picture of everything. And you want to know. Yeah, you want to find it out. So you seek his kingdom first, and you want to see, well, why is this way, or why is it that way? Well, who was whose father, and what reason was it for? And then you start getting that another piece of that puzzle in there. Ooh, that looks even better.
Yeah, and it bolsters your faith. Like, okay, there really is a picture that this is all going to come together and form. Like this is, and it also, for me, it makes me want to praise the Father all the more every time I, start to see something. I'm like, because I know I can't help but give him the glory for these things because it is so beautiful. It is so intricately woven and intelligently designed and just wow. And, it excites me. So I encourage, anyone and everyone, just because you don't understand something doesn't mean you can't understand it.
When you start class at a college or whatever, you're given a book. You look at the book, you open it up and go, whoa, boy, I hope I make it through this class. But when you go through it chapter by chapter and you research and use the formulas or follow the directions, on how to make this or how to make that or how to complete the chemistry, whatever class you're taking, you get that book, you go, whoa, it's a pretty thick chemistry book. Or philosophy, any kind of math or whatever it is, you start taking that class and it's got a textbook and you start going through it and you tackle it little by little. And then at the end of the class, you get a grade on how well you understand it. If you didn't understand it well, you better go back and get in that book again.
Yeah, great analogy.
George, did you have any thoughts on this genealogy stuff? What Carrie brought up with the video?
No, it's really fascinating. Just the insight that how God provides. It's just amazing, and I'm just sitting back, marveling. And I'm like the thin thread, and how our Father provides. It's just really so simple, but it's so hard to get that, and it's repeated a million times because we can't get that concept. First, I can't, and just like the Ark of the Covenant and all this stuff that was mentioned, we focused on the box and we put God in that box. That's not our Father. Father says, no, that's not what I wanted. Even some of the sacrifices and stuff, You know, I don't know, we're goofy, you know, and I'm goofy too. And I'm just amazed at the patience of my father, you know, it's just amazing. You know, that's really what I've gotten out of the great insight on so many things, just on this, quote, boring genealogy, all this fruit is coming off that tree that is just really fascinating to me, and I just dig it, you know. So that's my take on it.
Thank you, George. Hey, Emily, did you hear much of it?
I heard some in and out. I had to go downstairs. It's been one of those days. And Keith's not here, so I don't have enough that I can comment on it. But Carrie, is it up on your blog?
I shared it on Facebook.
Okay.
So it's on my
I'll
Facebook.
check it out, because I was following along a little bit in Luke, and then the passage you were talking about with King David and stuff, which most people think it refers to Solomon, and thinking about that it was actually talking about years later in the future. That's actually how I've always read that passage. So it's surprising that you should say that, because King Solomon screwed up. He wasn't, yeah. So yeah, I'll check out more so I can comment on it another time.
Well, my takeaway on this is that I like it. It looks like a beautiful thing. It helps tie some loose ends. It kind of gels things a little. Another puzzle piece, as Niels put it. I think this is a big deal, and I think it likely will work out. I think it's an important little piece of the whole bigger picture. So I'm excited about it. And there's a lot of little offshoots discussions to have as you look into this. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's worth investigating for sure. So thanks, Carrie. That's good stuff.
I really do think that Yah's going to reveal more and more as time goes on to those who are humble and willing to search it out, and things that search it out in a way that nobody's thought of before, and be willing to change their very significantly important, ideas on things. And so it's just going to be peeled off in layers and layers. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, one thought I had through all this is I think that the real Israel, the real firstborn, the next harvest, they're going to be part of this real thin thread, barely making it through, not really accepted by most people, yet there's a continual process, there's a continual strand to hold on to through all of it. And he takes the least looking sons to do it with, and it's okay. I can be that guy. If that's the kind of guy he wants to use, then I hope it's me. Little misfit guy.
Well, I'm just glad that I'm glad that Jacob is the biological father of Joseph, because then it aligns with our previous thought, Matthew being the biological line and Luke being the spiritual line. Otherwise, if it's the other way around, it's gonna be confusing again for me. And also we're thinking, Ken and I were talking that studying Torah is at times it can be like tedious, and gonna read and this has got to do with us, things like that. But now this is one of those times that you'll be glad that you're studying Torah. For one, I am confident that we can explain this easier and better with our children because they know it. We've been reading this, and now this is the time to apply this knowledge. If we haven't been reading and knowing the Torah, it's gonna be there's no way they would understand this. So it really pays. It really pays big time. Studying His Word. So yeah,
Yes.
it's an encouragement for us.
We still one thing that we have learned from the fellowship that Father has led us to before is doing the Parsha cycle. we just did a little bit different when we were doing it as a family. But there were a few times when we were tempted to, just stop the Parsha, reading Parsha every Shabbat and do something else, do some other readings. But it will just be a fleeting thought. We just keep at it. Sometimes it's like repetitive, but there are gleanings every now and then, like, oh, we didn't see that before all these years, and we didn't see that. And plus it helps to explaining these things to our children, like aha moments coming from this Zoom meeting. When we explain to them, they get it easily, because they're reading it year after year. One change that we did was we start Genesis not as the Jews do towards the end in the fall. We do it like at the start of the biblical year. So, but we follow the how it's
how it is
divided, because it just makes it easier to cover it in a year. And then we read the prophets as a whole and the New Testaments as a whole too, not portions by portions. So yeah, so it's a blessing when we get to read and understand and learn so much.
Yeah, I was encouraged. Talk about that thin thread. I kept thinking in my mind, a remnant. You hear that over and over again about Yahweh's having a remnant of people, but the thin thread, and I think of messy family situations. How many of us, some of us, maybe in this room, some people, they've only been married one time, and they've been married to that same woman, or husband, their whole adulthood, and they have children, and their children are stable, and all of their children, when they grow up, they have one spouse or whatever that they're faithful to. And, but in this day and age, that's rare. How many of us have had varying relationships and just varying circumstances, that it could be so easily thought that, man, I messed things up, or what's going to happen, how I come out of this situation, if you're from a broken home or whatnot. This isn't new. As we're seeing this kind of stuff, this isn't new. And yet look at the amazing things that the Father can do. And it's encouraging, I think. He sees us all. He sees us all. He knows us all. Praise him. Okay. Do we want to?
I just wanted to say that sometimes the misfits are the perfect fit. That's just seems to be a recurring theme.
Well, then I'm perfect.
So anybody else want to talk on that subject for now? Do we want to end the recording? Is everybody done? I'm done for now. I'd like to revisit though. I need time to think about it.
Yeah, I'm good.